The mics are hot and we're recording, and this is Tom Ficklin, and we're chatting with Paul Carty. Paul and I share some 3 years. We were spending the same location, not on the same number of years. I was up in Wallingford. I got out of that prison in '67, and you were released in what year again?
72.
So again, we're alums of that time it was just a Choate school. Now it's Choate Rosemary Hall, and we're kind of chatting. The first intention is kind of share with some of the younger folks that are part of the Choate Rosemary Hall alumni website, just kind of go down memory lane and kind of share some generational knowledge. And I think Paul, some of the younger folks might just be curious what the old geezers are up to with those of us that are still alive. I saw that Tim Bradley posted something about a gentleman that passed away that I think was right around your class. So every Eliezer was his last name, I believe. But
George?
Yeah,
George.
Died? Yes.
Oh.
I don't mean to say that to shock you because we are recording, but yeah, it was on the page. It was on the Choate alumni page 2 days ago. So
I know he's been sick for a long time though. So
yeah, it mentioned that he'd been sick for a long time. So it just goes to show that every moment is precious. And he, George, yourself, myself, Tim, Byron Haskins, who I talked to last week, we're all that same. We all have been AARP eligible for several years.
Mm-hmm. Just
for several years. But Paul, well, good to see you. So I want to show you. This is a picture. This is a picture of the ABC class that first summer before we got. It was a boot camp up at Dartmouth that summer of '63, '64, before everybody got shipped out to the various schools. And I have it here just to kind of remind me of how young I am. How did you find your way up to Wallingford? What kind of spirits moved you up that way?
Well, it was my mom. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, actually Crown Heights, which is adjacent to Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And my mom was part of this community organization, and she got me involved in the youth part. And one Saturday she had me take this test. Mm-hmm. It turned out it was the SSAT, and it wasn't for a particular school, but it was for the ABC program.
Right.
And then the program would place you wherever it was appropriate. So I took the test, and then I got this folder in the mail, and it looked like it was a blue folder. It looked like chocolate, but there weren't enough letters for chocolate.
You can see the folder in your mind right now as we speak.
Oh yeah.
And this was like 1969 or something.
1969, yeah. And it was for Choate school, so she made an appointment for us to go up to see the campus, and so I saw the campus. I liked it. I'd also she also took me over to St. Paul's in Garden City, New York, which was a diocesan prep school. Mm-hmm. It was closer to home, which I kind of liked. And I'd also taken a test to get into Brooklyn Tech, which is one of the top 3 high schools in the city.
Yes.
And so I got in. I really wanted to go there, but my mother said, "No, you're going to Choate." So I went to Choate. So.
And how do you think the ABC folks made contact with her? And I appreciate your sharing that. I'll tell you what.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the reason I mention it, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember exactly, but my mother was good friends with one of the high school counselors at Westinghouse High School. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that her friend, who was a counselor at Westinghouse High School, kind of mentioned the ABC program to my mother. But that's my best recollection. But it's just so important that the parents that are on the lookout for us, grandparents, we just take for granted just the folks that have been praying for us, but actively praying for us and actively taking steps, not even knowing. So when you mentioned Brooklyn Tech, I mean, when I got mine, I had never heard of these schools before, and Brooklyn Tech, I'm sure you'd heard of, living in the area where you did. but it's just so important to kind of take a moment to give homage to those that prayed actively for us, acted in a prayerful fashion for
Oh
our
yeah.
for our benefit. That's something. So you get up to Wallingford and you spend 3 years. As you know, I've spent a lot of time in media and marketing, and did a newspaper for 10 years here in New Haven, and
Mm-hmm.
radio show for the last 5, and worked for something called Empire New Haven. But the point I'm trying to get to, I have fleeting memories of when I graduated in '67. But one of the distinct memories is coming out of the dining hall on Sundays. There's a fireplace there, and on the fireplace would be stacked the New York Times. I'm not sure if that was the case if you can recall that, but on Sundays you would just grab your 2, 3, 4 inches of the Sunday New York Times for if you so chose. And I'm pretty sure that kind of was my first baptism. I kind of gravitated to words and reading and just being a natural instinct. And that stands out in my mind in terms of how some things can condition you. After graduation, you went on to Wesleyan.
That's correct.
And then law school directly afterwards?
No. What happened was when I was at Wesleyan, I had planned on going to law school afterwards. So they didn't have a formal pre-law program. They had something called the College of Social Studies,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of the people came out of there ended up going to law school.
Okay.
But it was a very intensive program, and it got to I wrote 27 papers my first year, right. So that tells you something about it. Very intense. Right, and it kind of burnt me out. So I took a year off, and when I came back, I stayed locally in Middletown, and I worked among the regular folks there.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of put my education into perspective, so that I realized that people at places like Choate Wesleyan were really kind of in an ivory tower, and which is cool, right? But you have to be able to deal with regular people who would have no clue what's going on in the ivory tower.
Mm-hmm.
So school basically was just a place to be to finish maturing, the way I looked at it. And then when you got out, you had to be able to not just deal, with the so-called elites, the intellectuals, but you have to be able to deal with the regular person and speak to that person on their level, right?
Sure.
So really, for me, the most valuable time at Wesleyan was the year that I took off, because up until that point in time, I didn't realize that there was that much of a difference between regular people and the so-called intellectuals.
Now reflect on that for me. And I'm not trying to interrogate you, but you grew up in Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights. But do you think when you're like a teenager, you aren't as aware of things as you are once you get into your 20s? In terms of disparity.
That's absolutely correct. But it was to the point where I didn't know that a transformation was taking place in me until I would go home in the summertime and talk to my friends and they say, Paul, stop, wait, what? You're in the ghetto now. Talk right. Yeah.
Bilingualism. Go back to the native Ebonics.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So I said, oh, okay. But then when I graduated, and I started working, I worked for a few years before I went to law school.
Okay.
But I was an insurance adjuster, and I go to work every day, in a suit and tie, and I'm dealing with Caucasians, and I come home and I have the guys in the neighborhoods ask me how I could deal with white people all day long, and all I could say was, well, if you ever want to get ahead, you're gonna have to learn how to do it. Right? You don't necessarily have to like it, but I mean, that's who's got the money, so either you're going to learn how to do it or you're going to stay where you're at.
And at that point, when you said home, that was you were still in Middletown at that point.
No, I was back in Brooklyn.
Oh, back in Brooklyn. Okay.
I was back in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Now, interestingly enough, I met my wife in Middletown.
All right.
She was a townie. She's not she's not one of these, ivory tower people. So she's a regular person. And, I'll tell you to, some extent, she keeps me grounded.
How long have you been married?
January will be 39 years.
And I know I could ask that because I've seen you celebrated that on your Facebook page. And I've been trolling you, man. I've been trolling you for a lot. We're going to conclude with some of your stuff that you've been saying on Facebook. I'm surprised you haven't been disbarred or something based on what you've been saying lately.
What?
I'm just saying, which I respect highly. Before we go to the law school career, because you've been practicing law for now 3 decades.
Yeah, just about 35 years.
35 years. But let's go back to Wallingford. What kind of jumps out at your mind? I'll tell you what I want to talk about that for a second, in terms of assimilation and identity formation and adjusting to your external environment. But what jumps out of your mind when you reflect on those 3 years?
Well, the first time that anybody ever called me a nigger was in Wallingford. And it wasn't on campus. I was riding a bicycle in town, and this little 4-year-old kid, nigger.
A 4-year-old.
Yeah, and I
thereabouts. Yeah.
Yeah, and I stopped, turn around, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, you're like, kid, right? And I'm thinking, well, he didn't learn that by himself.
That's right.
So that told me something about the surroundings. And I had heard from some of the Black upperclassmen that Wallingford was, let's say, it was an interesting town back then, right? So that stands out. Experiences that I had with some of the other students who would do or say things and not realize that it was offensive. And they'd always say, well, I'm sorry. And it got to the point where I had to tell them, I said, man, you guys are the sorriest bunch of guys that I know. Cut it out. But, when I got out of Cho, it came back to me because when I got to Wesleyan, I was able to work at that level without any problem, so that some of the incoming freshmen who were coming in with me, they'd be all freaked out, and then they got all this work to do, and I'm like, well, let's go hang out. What's the matter? And then when I got out of Wesleyan, I go on my job interview, and I said, well, when I got to Choate, we wore white shirts, blue blazers, and gray slacks. And I'm looking around the office where they ultimately hired me, and what are they wearing? Blue blazers, white shirts, and gray slacks. And I'm like, oh, wow. They really, right down to what you wear, they prepared you.
I just hit the pause button because Byron has shared that same scenario also with that same anecdote with us last week about kind of we have to wear the mask, and then how do you adapt and adjust to your external environment. So he said you guys are, thanks for reiterating that.
Yeah, sure.
So what was this, one more anecdote in terms of, if you can recall, regarding being in Wallingford for 3 years. Any teachers stand out, or activities, or food, or is it just a blur? It's
well, I mean, it's a lot of different experiences that I had. It's not quite a blur, but there's a lot of different things. I mean, I don't know if we can say this, but I learned about breaking and entering from the rich guys at Choate.
All right. Well, we won't go.
We won't go there.
We won't go there. I would not have expected you to say that, but again,
Yeah,
everybody that's listening, and we are recording, that is kind of an example of the courage that you demonstrated as a person, to say the least. Oh man, it's too much. It's too much. Law school. Well, can you remember the moment when you decided to kind of leave the working profession and kind of take the LSATs and take that leap of faith?
Yeah, well, it's something. If I followed along with my life plan, I would have graduated from law school in 1979.
Indeed.
Going straight through.
Right.
But I took the year off in undergrad, and then when I graduated, I kind of needed a break from academia because I'd had 3 years of children, even with the year off between sophomore and junior year at Wesleyan. I mean, it was still extremely high pressure academia for 4 or 5 years there, right? So, and then I didn't know how to pay for law school. So I said, let me work, and see if I can figure this out. And I was working for a company that they told us that if they found out we were going to law school in the first 3 years as an adjuster, we'd get fired.
Huh,
and first year as a supervisor, if you got there, you would get fired. So okay, so that's fine. I needed a job. Okay, so I went to a company after 3 years up here, and this is when I moved to West Haven.
Okay.
And when I interviewed, all the upper level management people were lawyers, and they said they would pay for law school. I said, really? Okay. So right then I said, well, I guess I have to take the LSAT.
Right. So and when you applied for that particular position, you didn't know at that point, or did you know that they had that kind of tuition reimbursement policy?
With that company, no. But when I first got into the insurance industry, the job description in the want ad said legal liaison. Turned out legal liaison was just an insurance adjuster.
Okay.
But it got me hooked. But on that, I'm dealing with lawyers all the time in that particular job. And after a while I started looking at my paycheck, and I'm looking at the cases I'm settling and dividing by 3. I'm looking at my paycheck, and I'm like, well, let's change this scenario a little bit. So, I went and I knew law school was going to be rough. If I went straight through, it's going to be even harder going at night. But if you want to do it, then you got to do what you got to do.
Sure. So where'd you go?
I went to UConn.
Went to UConn. Okay. And did they have that? Like, was that West Hartford line? Has it always been there, or was it a different location at the point?
It was on I'm going to say Farmington Avenue in West Hartford when I got there.
Okay.
Then it was like a big cinder block building, but it's law school. It was fine. Then they kept saying they were going to open up the new campus in the old Hartford Seminary, and the ninth division is 4 years. So they kept saying year 2, year 3, and year 4 they opened it, but they kind of did a rush job, just slapped some sheetrock up and put people in there. So it's a little better now, but I went for 3 years in the cinder block building and 1 year on the Hartford campus.
And talk to me about the area that you practice.
Now, I have a general practice, but I do a lot of criminal litigation. I do a lot of accident cases, do some family, workers' comp, landlord tenant. I touch on a lot of different things, but primarily it's court work, criminal and civil litigation.
And can you trace, in terms of even going back to, in terms of Wallingford, I can see myself in the library. Can you trace kind of the breadcrumbs of your life in terms of what led you to law, in terms of the skill set, be it something you might learn at Choate or Wesleyan or et cetera?
Well,
other than breaking and entering.
When I was a little kid, it goes
Uh-huh.
back to when I was a little kid, you
Okay.
know, and like my grandmother used to say, I pace a lot, I talk a lot, I argue a lot.
Uh,
You should be a lawyer.
uh-huh. Okay.
And you know, I was interested in like the legal shows on TV, even you know, as in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, I kind of had that idea when I went to Choate. That's what I wanted to do. You know, when I went to Wesleyan, I still wanted to do that, which is why I had got into the College of Social Studies. And even after you know, it kind of burned me out, and I said, well, let me graduate and then take a breath and then move on. And
Right.
it still said it was still out there. So when I got the opportunity, I said, you know, I'll take it. Thank you.
Tremendous. Tremendous. Let's spend, if you can, another. I know you've had a rough, a bit, not a rough day, a pleasant day for you and I at our age to be able to wake up, as they say. It's a blessing.
Yep.
Folks that aren't around. But if you could spend another 5 or so minutes uh, in terms of this diversity and inclusion thing. Some of the schools, for example, is having some discussions in terms of diversity and inclusion and student life even upcoming. And I know they've had these diversity and inclusion officers, and all the schools now have them. Is this a new fad, something that we shouldn't even have had to think about in 2020? Does it surprise you that we're still trying to resolve this racial harmony issue?
Well, I say we shouldn't have to, but if we do, then we need to do it.
Uh-huh.
All right, and that's the way I look at it. And you know, I've been watching some of the older athletes or activist athletes talking about things that they did back in the '60s,
Right.
even things that Jack Johnson did back in the turn of the century.
Right.
They're talking about the same stuff year after year after year after year, and they're saying, "Oh, well, that's in the past." No, it's not in the past. It's now. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are tired of listening to that, then make the change.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you know, it's going to keep happening. I just hope it doesn't have to be this way, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the same thing over and over and over and over. You know, it was John Carlos, I believe, was
Yeah, John Carlos and Tommy Smith, right.
yeah. John Carlos was on TV. It was either yesterday or the day before yesterday, and he's talking about, you know, like Colin Kaepernick. The reason that Colin Kaepernick is kneeling is exactly what these guys did almost 60 years ago for the same reason.
And folks forget that they can see easily in their mind that Tommy Smith and John Carlos raising their fist,
Yep.
but they forget that what they took off their shoes.
Yeah.
So they're in their socks to kind of indicate that the poverty issue, and so people even forget from head to toe they were expressing their protest. Paul, you don't have to get up, but just kind of gesture and tell us a little bit about, are you in your office in New Haven or are you in your home office in West Haven?
Office in New Haven. I try not to do too much work in my house.
Okay, so just gesture and tell us about some of the plaques on the wall there. This is a chance to kind of promote yourself and just share with us some of the things.
All right. Well, I've got up here, that's my certificate to practice in the state of Connecticut. Then over here, I have below that, I'm admitted to the tax corps, but I haven't done anything there in almost 30 years. ABA over here is the
ABA is American Bar Association.
Actually, yes, it's the ABA, not American over here. Then over here up top, I've got admission to the U.S. District Court, Mashantucket Pequot Court, the National Bar Association, which is the Black Bar Association. Then I've got on this side, you know, Yukon Law, Wesleyan, Choate.
Yes, you have your Choate diploma up there?
Oh, yeah.
Man, I wouldn't know. I don't know where. Who knows? Only the Lord knows where mine might be. I can't even see. Oh, that's too much. Go ahead.
That wall I've got, that's my karate wall over there.
Oh, cut it out. Okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
And when did you pick up karate?
Um, about 6 months after I got sworn into the bar.
Okay. Okay. So for protection, or because you knew you were on the designated one on the want list?
No, I don't. That's another thing that I always wanted to do was to earn my black belt.
Cut it out, man. All right.
So, when I was at Choate, I said, well, I didn't have any money, didn't have the time. When I was at Wesleyan, I didn't have the money, even if I had the time. Then when I got out of Wesleyan, I didn't have any money. Then when I went to law school, I didn't have time I barely had time to breathe.
Right.
Then when I got out of law school, I'm sitting around at night and I'm watching TV when there's nothing worth watching on. And I said, this is ridiculous. I got to do something, because I hadn't done anything physical in 9 years at that point.
Okay.
And I said, Father Time's not going to be nice to me forever.
For
so
sure.
I happened to go out, on the post road around the corner from where I live.
Right.
And the karate school that I've been checking out happened to move right around the corner.
Okay.
So one day I walked in and, looked around, and maybe 4 or 5 months later, I signed up. I've been there ever since.
Cut
So
it
I've
out.
been doing that now for 34 years.
Oh man, that's tremendous. It's
Yeah.
tremendous, tremendous, tremendous. And as we kind of conclude, what would you like to kind of say to some of the people that might be in Wallingford for the first time in their life as we speak, or folks that have recently graduated, folks that have been out for a while? What kind of message would you like to share with them?
I think that they shouldn't take that education for granted. At the time when I was there, I thought it was sort of an imposition, making me go. But afterwards, when I get to college, after college, when I got into the working world, I found it was extremely valuable to me. There's things that it prepared me for that I didn't even know I needed to be prepared for. Plus, if your frame of reference is one neighborhood, one particular area, group of people, an experience such as that you're going to get at a place like Choate, it's going to help you tremendously, because you're going to start to realize that even though you're kids, that you have to be able to deal with, different people on their level, their own level. And as you get older, college age and even beyond college, then that's going to, get hammered home even more. And if you don't quite get that, then you're going to, end up like some folks who I know who have this great education and they're just floundering through life.
Just as we conclude, any comments in terms of with your? I have to ask this. I shouldn't say I have to ask this, but I'd like to ask this in terms of your academic training and your legal training in terms of the Supreme Court vacancy that we now are presented with. Any comments in that regard?
Yeah. I kind of wish that she could have held on longer, a few months longer.
Right.
What's going on right now, I think, is a travesty. It's pure politics. It's basically, these guys are double talking you. They say one thing today, they say something else tomorrow. I don't see a problem with it. And the issue that I have isn't just with them, is all these people out here in the public who are just going along with it. And a lot of those people don't realize how badly this current administration and the GOP, I have to say, are actually harming them. And when they do realize it, it's going to be too late. It's
No,
really going to be too late.
and you're right. Over 60 million people voted last time for one. I call them 145th. You're going to have at least 55 million folks vote also in front of him and for him. So those sentiments and those, excuse the expression, but those soldiers will still be on the battlefield fighting against us, regardless of what happens on November 3rd. So, and on that line, what would you say to some of the young people that are thinking about forming their political identity, thinking about getting involved with Black Lives Matter, thinking about joining either the Republican Student Party, on various campuses, you have the Democratic Student Party and the Republican Student Party. What would you say to some of the young people in terms of how they can sharpen their political acts and really be constructively engaged?
Well, I would say for starters, pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, pay attention to what's going on. I talk to a lot of young folks, in their 20s and 30s, even in their 40s. They don't watch the news, right? They just, they get their news from social media, which, as we know, can often is stilted, can be, and often is stilted, and often it's also fake. It's not the true version. Look at the news. Gather up information, make up your own mind. Don't let people tell you what to think. Right? The most important thing is this: be informed and then vote.
Indeed.
There are the people I know in their 30s and 40s who have never voted, and to me that's unconscionable. Because if you have a problem with what's going on, in society, in the country, and you didn't vote, just put your head down and shut up, because because you're part of the reason why it's like this.
Paul, thanks, man.
I'm kind of blunt. What can I tell you?
Well, no, and we haven't even talked about the. If folks take a look at your Facebook page, and I would say even your Facebook page has so much. It's sharing news, highlights, commentary, editorials, etc., that people can kind of tune into and collect data so they can reach their own kind of decisions and decide on their actions. Thank you so much, man. I'm glad we could make this happen. I know I've been bouncing you guys around. Tim Bradley's going to kind of jump in the hot seat next week.
All right.
And I wanted to do you guys individually because for Tim, as you know, if I ask him one question, he'll be talking for 50 minutes, and then the show will be over, right? So. Oh
yeah. So Tim then.
so I decided that I better split this up a little bit.
Yeah. All right.
In terms of equal time, and then we'll go from there. But thank you once again. Hello to the family. We haven't talked about that angle, but that's another thing I might want to chat. Might want to get you and Byron and your wives on, just kind of chat about just what does it mean to kind of create a harmonious infrastructure in your home.
Sure.
If that makes any sense. Take care, man. I just really appreciate
you too, Tom.
being available.
All righty.
Be well.
All righty. Bye-bye.